I'm in St Just, which is an old mining town in the heart of West Penwith. It's a beautiful spring day and I'm off to see the sculptor Paul Mount, who's lived here since returning from West Africa in 1962, and his wife, the painter June Miles. Well, this maquette made out of card, Paul, is really the blueprint for a future sculpture.
Yeah, it's got to have these plate parts numbered and templates made of each of them. Then they're taken to the, put in on a computer and enlarged. You can make it any size you want. So once it's on the computer, it can be repeated again and again. It's silly, really.
And then it'll be fabricated in welded bronze sheet.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Or stainless steel if it's appropriate. But stainless steel needs to be polished, I think. Some people do use a pattern on it, but I like the polished feel because you get reflection. And it's very difficult to get at parts like this to polish. You can use polished sheet, of course, to sort of start off with the sheet already polished. And provided you're a good welder, you don't mess it up.
And you have Michael Werbicki in Somerset, who's an expert fabricator. And
I worked with him for years now, and I couldn't do without him, because I had to give this up some time ago. It got too much for me. But I used to do the whole thing myself, from start to finish, cutting it out with a cut-off wheel. But now it's the computer that cuts it out.
And the paintings in the adjacent studio, although they trade in the same arcs and split circles and rectangles and geometric fragments as the sculpture, they're not in any sense the painting studies for sculptures, whereas these card maquettes are very much working studies for sculpture.
Yes. This is the basis of the thing. You obviously tend to produce the same shapes, whether they're in 3 dimension or 2.
Much of your sculpture is both 2 and 3 dimensional. I mean, the language you're using is often planar and therefore flat, 2-dimensional, but you're constructing it very much with space in mind, so that the volume and the spatial aspect of the sculpture is a product of inflecting these planes in space.
Yes, very much so. I suppose sculptures always tended to be like this, but during the abstract period it's become more so. But the spaces are as important as the form itself. This is another development, trying to get better relationships between the parts, but neither of them satisfies me at the moment. I'll have to do some more work on them. But I tend to work on several pieces at a time. I'll drop this and then take up something else, like this one, which should be in 2 parts. I've yet to work out just how they'll relate, but they should integrate rather in that sort of way.
And these 2-form sculptures are often less to do with the boats, windjammers, sails.
Oh yes.
And perhaps more to do with 2 figures maybe, or 2 interacting.
Yes, they start off tending to be two figures. I did a lot in bronze, which were actually quite closely related to figures. but they become more and more abstract.
And the bronze figures that you've produced are often of dancing
Yes.
figures, and therefore I would suggest perhaps that that contains the vital element of movement through space that draws you maybe to windjammers or to the idea of boats moving across water.
Well, no, I don't think the two things are related. I used to go to nightclubs in Lagos where people danced, and the movement of the dancers interested me, and the sculptures that I've got of that type are to do more with dance movement than actual physical form. I used to draw from television too when there was ballet on. That's the model for that one.
There's an interesting relationship between the sort of curvilinear, rounded element and then the more the squarer, rectangular. Like a helter-skelter, isn't it?
Well, it's the idea of birds in a cage that are continually flying around and trying to get out and never do.
So it's a tension between containment and freedom.
Yes.
Space and constriction.
Yes.
Yeah, this was welded from bronze sheet.
Yes. Yes, you get a lot of material left over when you cut from large sheets. So I put those bits that are, if you like, the female of the male piece, put them together in different ways.
You make a kind of smaller...
A different version, a different sculpture altogether.
In that painting there, for example, just behind the sculpture, I'm intrigued by the balance, if you like, between pure abstraction and yet a fully recognisable Mediterranean hilltop village with the cube-like.
Yes, it's based on the actual shapes that I found in a particular village. This is from a drawing, but very much simplified and altered in colour deeply. And that was the basis for many of the other paintings, particularly now that one is based on an actual drawing I did and painting. There's a painting underneath it of Positano on the Amalfi Coast, but then completely reworked. And from that I went to this, which was based on one on the Atlantic coast of Spain, the southern Atlantic coast, just a small strip of Atlantic coast near Jerez.
Many of these paintings have that same rhythmic quality of movement that you get in the sculptures.
I don't think of them in the same terms, but people have often said
they're not in any way rehearsals or studies for sculpture, they just...
No. It's quite a different thing. I always found the colour a bit difficult to manage. Unlike June, my wife, she manages colour beautifully.
But I always feel that a sculptor such as yourself, even though you started at the Royal College as a student, as a painter, but I always find with sculptors their sense of colour is often influenced by the materials they're using as sculptors,
Oh,
or the textures that they use as sculptors,
yes.
that influences the colour they use in their paintings, and equally the painted or drawn work of a sculptor often has a greatest feeling for the third dimension.
Yes, obviously.
Yeah.
But in fact, some of these are quite flat, that don't have any great three-dimensional quality in them.
So perhaps that flatness that you're talking about is specifically the heritage of Cubism, that shallow space, that tension between the flat surface. Yeah.
Yes, I think that's true.
These are a nice group of still life paintings, June.
Thank you very much.
They have a cool versus warm colour temperature contrast. Sometimes you go for pattern and for complexity, and other times there's a sort of almost monochrome mood.
I do very much admire Mary Potter, and I've always been interested in the fact that she paints monochrome paintings, and I thought I'd try, but I find it very difficult. I'm brought back to the warm-cool relationship. I don't see really how I can keep free of that, really. I can't do monochrome, not real monochrome. I don't think any of these are truly monochrome.
I mean, that gorgeous blue still life here is composed of several types of blue.
It was to do with blue. It started off with cerulean, and I wanted to relate everything to cerulean.
Blue, in common with, I suppose, most colours, have an incredible variety.
They certainly do.
Yeah, going for
Hot blues, cold blues. Yeah. Most colours do, don't they? Have their own hot or cool versions of themselves.
This composition is made up of these different blues, and it's almost as if they are different colours.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I see what you mean. They're all technically blues.
They're all technically blues, but it's as if they are different colours, and obviously tonally you can model with lighter or darker blue.
Yeah.
But against a sort of domestic interior backdrop.
Usually against Indian patchwork. I don't usually use a domestic setting. I haven't got one in my studio, so they're contrived, really. They are contrived.
However, there are paintings here where there are references in the background to maybe a French or Cornish landscape.
I don't know if there are some here or not. I haven't done it lately. Not sure. Yes, that one. That's relating to a Cornish landscape. Yeah. I haven't done that lately.
Well, this composite, if I can call it that, of a still life in front of a Cornish local landscape there is one example. And then, of course, over here you have some of the French landscapes which were painted outside in front of the motif.
Yes.
Relating to the time when you both had a French holiday home.
Yes. Yes, those three. That was from the time when we had a house in the Pyrenees.
Again, in that particular instance, there's the colour is at one and the same time subdued and toned down, and yet also full of chromatic subtlety and breadth of colour. The orange roofs against the cool blues of the hills behind.
Okay. Very difficult to talk about paintings, isn't it? They're to be seen, not talked about.